Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone, and this is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC Radio. We are the crown jewel of AM radio, the most dynamic and among the most powerful AM radio stations in the world. If you don't live in the greater New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, you can always find us at WABCradio.com, where we are live streaming worldwide. Recently rated as the #1 talk radio station in the nation. You don't want to miss any of the great programming here at 77 WABC. It's extraordinarily difficult to be an independent investigative journalist today. It doesn't really matter the quality of your investigative research and your reporting. You are subject to the vagaries and the difficulty of breaking through the din of corporately owned media. But Frank Parlato, Jr., an investigative journalist who is at the helm of the Frank Report, has broken the mold. It was the deep investigative reporting of Frank Parlato that brought down the Nexium sex cult. That's spelled NXIVM for those who are unfamiliar with it. This was a huge story, and in the beginning, there was only one reporter who was exposing both the financial fraud and the sexual abuse of one Keith Raniere, who was ultimately sentenced to over 120 years in prison. But ultimately, the New York Times and the Albany Times-Union would recognize the outstanding investigative reporting of Frank Parlato, whose exposures brought that abusive cult down. Frank Parlato, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger. It's a pleasure to be here.
There's always a lot of disinformation about this, so we'll dispose about it up front. I had a brief intersection with Nexium myself. I must tell you, I never saw a nubile young harem of women who had been captured by the cult. I saw a group of middle-aged housewives taking a course to restore their self-esteem. But as I told you at the time, what I really thought were evidence of enormous financial crimes. It appeared to me that Keith Raniere and others in the Nexium cult targeted the children of extremely wealthy parents who had extremely large trust funds in order to tap into those trust funds and essentially abscond with tens of millions of dollars. You dug much, much deeper, and tell folks what you found.
Well, thank you for relating it the way you did, because I think there's been kind of a twisted media narrative about your role in NXIVM that seems to be distorted along political lines. But as I've written in my reporting, that you were one of the critical people who assisted and helped to expose the criminal enterprise of NXIVM. And that was going back as far as 2007. You were perhaps the very first voice against NXIVM, and I clearly recall phone calls you made to me to look into certain financial improprieties. So I think that in typical media reversal of truth, you helped in a serious way to bring NXIVM down, and the reporting in some mainstream media has been precisely the opposite.
Yeah, welcome to the fake news media. This was a persistent goal of yours, and you really did it single-handedly. For folks who haven't been to the FrankReport.com, Frank is one of the most courageous, independent, investigative journalists in the country, also one of the hardest working. The reason that we have him here today is that Frank told me that he believes that the case in which Penn State assistant football coach Jerry Sandusky was tried and convicted of the sexual abuse of multiple minors and sent to prison almost 10 years ago is unjust. It is, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, it is your contention that Sandusky was falsely accused and unjustly convicted. Now, my recollection of this is that there were a number of boys who came forward and claimed that they were abused by Sandusky. Are you telling me today that all of those witnesses lied?
Yes, that's my opinion. There's some dispute over whether some of them who testified, and by the way, they were not boys, they were men when they testified, and every one of them had a civil attorney, and every one of them collected more than $1 million for their stories. And I believe personally that they all lied. Now, some scholars and people who have studied the case believe that maybe some of them did not lie. They just were falsely encouraged to remember things that did not happen. Most of the accusers were subjected to something called repressed memory recovery, where they did not remember that Jerry Sandusky abused them, but they took and underwent a tremendous amount of therapy to recall. And in these instances, they suddenly started to remember abuse that led them to making anywhere between $1.5 million to $20 million for their testimony.
Now, Frank, this case happened over 10 years ago. Sandusky was tried and convicted, and he's in prison now. What motivated you to essentially reopen this case and investigate it anew?
Well, it was actually just happenstance. One of my writers had written a story about another unrelated matter, and they happened to mention Jerry Sandusky, and with the typical presumption, because he was convicted of him being guilty of abusing and molesting boys, something which is, at that time, I thought to be a given. And I received a email from a retired professor at Berkeley, Dr. Frederick Cruz, a very distinguished professor and author of 14 books, a couple of best-selling books. And he said to me in an email, everything that the public believes about Jerry Sandusky is exactly the opposite of the truth.
Amazing. So, look, I'm not a giant sports fan, as I think you actually heard Donald Trump say in the intro here. I guess I fail to understand the motive of the prosecutors. Look, I understand that there's corruption in the political climate, but Sandusky was not only a football coach, but he was a protege of the much revered Joe Paterno, one of the legends of college football. What was their motive here? What was the end game?
Well, there was a combination of motives. The governor at the time had a personal vendetta going against the president of Penn State. And the chairman or the head of the board of trustees had a personal vendetta against Joe Paterno. The accusers were rustled up by a number of civil lawyers who advertised for victims, understanding that Penn State would pay a fortune, and it was kind of a perfect storm of greed and opportunity that created a falsehood that expanded and enlarged by the media, whose own agenda is to enjoy a lubricious story such as this one and celebrate it and pound away to see results, whether they're true or not. And the big headline was Joe Paterno.
All right. Well, we lost our guest, who we presume will call back in and rejoin us. You can go to the frankreport.com for his extraordinary reporting. I remember very well his complete expose of the NXIVM sex cult, which the New York Times didn't really pick up on what essentially was Frank's reporting until such time that he revealed that the head of this sex cult, Keith Raniere, now in prison for a sentence of over 120 years, was actually branding with a metal hot brand his victims. Frank Parlato joins us yet again. We're talking about the case against Penn State assistant coach Jerry Sandusky, who almost 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, was tried and convicted for sexual assault against boys who, by the time they testified against him, were men. Frank Parlato, investigative journalist, rejoins us now. Frank, this is obviously a very unpopular cause. Most people have read and digested the media coverage of some time ago, which paints Sandusky as a predator, and a number of others in Penn State as being part of a massive cover-up. Why did you decide to invest your time and put your reputation on the line in this investigation? And more importantly, what has been the response so far?
Well, I spent 3 months looking at this case very carefully before I would venture to publish my conclusion, which is that Jerry Sandusky not only got a very unfair trial, a show trial, but that he is innocent, and that the accuser's stories, every last one of them, falls apart just based on evidence, based on what they said and the impossibility of what they said. And so that I felt it was incumbent on me to bring this out while a man who is now 80 years old is sitting in prison now for the 11th year. He was railroaded into prison. And so I feel that it's important that we get public attention to this, and it has begun. There are people all over the nation and even in other countries who are beginning to take a brand new look at this issue, and anyone who studies it for just a fair amount of time will realize that Jerry Sandusky was railroaded into prison by a combination of corrupt and maleficent forces.
Speak to us about Joe Paterno, whose legend was also tarnished in the scandal. Joe Paterno in Pennsylvania and in the world of college football was considered a god, but this damaged his reputation exceedingly. What, if anything, was his role here? What, in your opinion, did Paterno know, and what didn't he know? And has he been equally disserved by this narrative as you claim Sandusky has?
Well, there's no doubt that Joe Paterno, the winningest coach in college football history, a man who deserves to be enshrined as a true national treasure, was discredited and disgraced. He was fired as the head coach after some 60 years of service to Penn State by a man who had a personal animus against him, John Sherma, the former chairman of U.S. Steel, a trustee at Penn State, was bitter with Paterno because he had not put his nephew on the Penn State football team, and then apparently later his nephew made a hell of his life and possibly died in a drug overdose. So we had a man who was vindictive against Paterno, this supremely good man, Paterno, and they concocted a story with a devious man by the name of Mike McQueary, who created a fiction, and the prosecutors exaggerated that fiction to entail that Joe Paterno knew that Jerry Sandusky had abused the boy in the shower room, in the locker room in Penn State, a complete falsehood, a lie that even the jury saw through. But this lie carried around the nation so quickly that they fired Paterno. The following week, he had a medical checkup because of this distressing kinds of information being fired. They discovered he had cancer, and he died 2 months later. His legacy and disgrace.
If you're just tuning in, folks, we're talking to Frank Parlato, Jr. of the Frank Report, investigative journalist. I'm Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back with more of Frank Parlato.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Right now, get a free select tool when you buy the Craftsman V20 2-pack battery kit. Whether it's the backyard, the bathroom, or beyond, Craftsman has the tools to help you power through and get the project done right. Because DIYing is unpredictable, but your tools shouldn't be. Shop Craftsman at Lowe's today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show. We're talking to Frank Parlato, Jr., independent investigative journalist. You can find him at thefrankreport.com. And he is making the case to us today that former assistant Penn State football coach Jerry Sandusky was unjustly accused of sexual assault against multiple minors and convicted to prison where he is now. Frank, what else do you think people need to know about this case? How common is that psychiatric technique of bringing back repressed memories? And why should people care about this?
I think there's a couple of reasons that I think it's significant. Firstly, a repressed recovered memory has been largely discredited everywhere. It can induce false memories. And it should have been excluded in this case, but Sandusky's attorney was not really competent for the task. He failed to challenge the introduction of repressed memory. So what we find is we have 8 men testifying who originally said that Jerry Sandusky never abused them. And then they go into court and they excuse their changed stories by saying they recovered their memories. And suddenly, with the help of their civil attorneys who referred them to these psychologists. I think, secondly, it's important because Joe Paterno has a vast throng of followers. And I found out this today. John Ziegler, who is a famous radio announcer, had communicated back in 2014 with Donald Trump about this. And I have a note from Trump that was sent to Ziegler, the radio personality, where Trump's instincts suggested to him that there seemed to be a rush to judgment here. And I have that letter, and I think that Trump understood that this was an unjust prosecution, at least as it related to Paterno, who he was familiar with. And I think that there's a huge growing body of Pennsylvanians who are looking at this anew.
So, Frank, tell me what your ultimate plan here. Do you see this as a book, as a documentary? I'm obviously have not seen your full findings, but I have enough experience with your investigative research techniques to know that you leave no stone unturned, pun unintended. What is the next step?
Well, we're going to continue to broadcast, to present this information, and what's happening is similar to what happened with NXIVM and other investigations that I've done, is that more and more people become interested in this. They realize there's been an injustice, and then gradually and reluctantly the mainstream media catches on. And, you know, this appearance today is a significant one where I'm speaking on the most prominent, important radio station in the United States, and this is the beginning. Gradually, the main goal is to free Jerry Sandusky, number one. First and foremost, he's in prison. Number two is to restore Paterno's legacy, because if Jerry Sandusky's innocent, it stands to reason Paterno is 100% innocent as well. And then after that, we'll look at, there's a documentary coming, a book coming, there'll be many things coming, and reform. And perhaps some of those sinister liars and corrupt actors will get their just reward.
Now, Frank, I didn't know this until you told me the other day that you have not only been involved in the production of a number of other important documentaries, but you write all your own music for those documentaries. And you made a very interesting point about the importance of music in telling a story. Talk to us about that.
Well, I believe that Hollywood has understood this for quite a number of years, and that by using the right kind of chords, harmony, key signature, the progression of melodies, and sometimes repetition, can, on a subliminal level, can soothe and open the subconscious mind to a receptive point of view that the director intends. And I think it's been very well done in big films in Hollywood, and I think that the world is yet to really fully appreciate the importance of subtle things like music in a production.
Very, very, very good point. Going back to your Nexium research, one question I wanted to ask you. The actress Catherine Oxenberg, who I greatly admired both as an actress and who I had the privilege to just meet socially, was among those whose children disappeared into the Nexium cult. How did that story end up?
Well, it ended up happily. And in fact, it was Catherine Oxenberg that called me because she couldn't get anyone in mainstream media to take up her challenge, which was her daughter had been branded with Keith Raniere's initials and had signed a pact of slavery and had provided a good deal of blackmail-worthy information so that she could be maintained as a quote-unquote slave. And Catherine called me and she asked me to help out. And I started writing stories, and ultimately the New York Times took up my story. Then the FBI began an investigation, and a few months later, Raniere was arrested, and India Oxenberg, Catherine's daughter, was freed from her thraldom, and now here lives in Key West, has a restaurant, and has, as we say, lived happily ever after.
That is a truly great story, and if you talk to Catherine Oxenberg, please extend my best regards to her. All right, folks, I promised you my famous chicken cacciatore recipe, and you're about to hear it. Let me thank Frank Parlato, investigative journalist. You can go to thefrankreport.com to read his research and investigations, including regarding the Sandusky case, which we talked about today. Thanks for joining us, Frank, on The Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger.
Well, folks, I said it in the opening, except nothing other than genuine San Marzano tomatoes. Those are not a brand of tomatoes. That is a style of tomatoes. But to make my mother's famous chicken cacciatore, you need a roasting chicken, some flour, 6 tablespoons of olive oil, a half pound of mushrooms, 1 chopped cup of onions, 1/2 cup of fine white wine, a medium-sized can of, yes, San Marzano tomatoes, a tablespoon of brandy, just a few sprigs of parsley chopped. Parsley is very, very strong. You never want to overuse it. A clove of garlic and, well, 2 tablespoons of butter. Now, cut the chicken into pieces. Sprinkle it with salt and pepper, roll it in the flour, and fry in the olive oil until golden brown. Now, remove the chicken from the pan, and to the remaining oil, add the mushrooms, chopped onions, and cook until slightly brown. Now add the wine and tomatoes, and put the chicken back in the pan after that is cooked for a bit, for 5 minutes, making sure that it is well heated throughout. Now is when you add the brandy, the chopped parsley, and then and only then the garlic. Cover this and cook it slowly. When the chicken is tender, that's when you add the butter. Now, here's the key thing, folks, which is you can serve this over pasta, or you can serve it over rice. So now you have yet another of Gloria Corbo Stone's family recipes, which we are proud to bring you. But once again, inspect that tomato can carefully, because you don't want San Marzano style tomatoes. You want the real thing. San Marzano tomatoes from the San Marzano Valley. You can get them at D'Agostino's, you can get them at Cristini's, you can get them at fine supermarkets everywhere, but under no circumstances accept anything other than the genuine article. I'm Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back. Coming up is Tulsi Gabbard, the former Hawaiian congressman, former Democrat, now an independent, and suddenly, it seems, a relatively hot prospect to be the nominee of the Republican Party for Donald J. Trump for vice president. We'll be right back.